Hi everybody, my name is Beth Toolen. I'm a former trustee for SHPOA and current member of SHPOA. And I'm with Brittany, who is the owner of the Wildlife Gardener. And we've used their resources for a number of years now. And we are here today to talk about our beautiful new native pollinator garden. So Brittany, I have some questions. How did you end up becoming interested in native gardening?
Yeah, so for me it started in college. I went to school at the University of Rhode Island, majoring in wildlife conservation biology. I put off my field botany class till the very end because it was so daunting and scary to have to identify all the plants. But the summer that I took that class, I was also serving an internship with Rhody Native, which was going out, identifying native plants, collecting seed, and actually growing them in a nursery greenhouse setting, and then we would send those plants out for restoration projects throughout Rhode Island.
Oh, wow.
So I was super immersed in that throughout the summer, got very attached to native plants and really interested. And then when I moved back to New Jersey, I started working for New Jersey Audubon in their stewardship department doing habitat restoration.
Oh, great.
So we did lots of projects removing invasive species, replanting native plants, and then I met my wonderful husband Dustin, who was owner and operator of the Wildlife Gardener at the time, along with his best friend Josh.
Yes.
They had gotten into this because they are big birders, and native plants provide
Attract the
habitat to birds.
Yep.
So it all kind of came together for me when we met and started getting together, getting to work at the nursery, getting to help out with the plant sales. And then when Josh and his family moved to New Mexico, we took over the business a few years ago.
Yes, that's great. That's
Yeah.
great. Yes, we know Josh because Josh spoke at the garden club a couple of years ago. And really that's what started to turn the tide here in Stone Harbor, I think. Okay, so why don't you explain a little bit about the benefits of native planting?
Yeah, so native plants are locally adapted to our soils and our climate. They don't require a lot of inputs from humans who are interested in keeping them in their gardens, and they attract wildlife to the gardens. So not only are we providing nectar to butterflies and bees, but we're also providing host plants to native caterpillars that are going to grow into our moths and our butterflies.
Right.
And of course, throughout the season, as it changes, seeds and berries in the fall and winter are sustaining bird populations as they're moving through. But again, the little inputs that are needed as you plant a native garden, of course there's some watering and weeding that needs to happen to start it up and get those roots well established. But many of our native species are perennial and they come back every year and can withstand a lot of different environmental conditions.
Great, great. Now, if a homeowner is interested in doing native plants, can they introduce them in areas of their yard, or should they just start all completely over?
Absolutely. So there's no need to rip everything out and totally redo it all at one time. In fact, I would recommend doing it in phases. So you can start as simply as just adding one native species when you're doing your spring gardening. You can evolve from there. You can take over an area that was maybe lawn and convert that to a native garden, such as we have behind us and we're going to be talking about today. But there's no need to totally start over. In fact, I think it's more sustainable to go a little bit at a time. Yeah.
Okay. What if someone, because as happens very often here in Stone Harbor, is tearing down a house and starting completely new?
Yeah.
Are there enough native species? Obviously we can see you have a lot here.
Absolutely.
Can you do an entire garden with all native?
Oh yes, you can do any garden in any condition with native plants. So in New Jersey we have over 2,000 native plants.
Wow.
That have adapted to the area. In the nursery trade, however, that's where things get a little tricky. So I was reading a study from Mount Cuba Center that said in the horticultural trade, maybe about 25% of the natives that we have are available for sale and retail purchase. And of those 25%, only 23% of those are actually the straight native species.
Wow.
So there's a lot of cultivars, there's a lot of plants that were bred for specific traits. When you're focusing on something like wildlife habitat and wanting to attract and provide resources, we want to get as close to the straight species as possible.
I see.
But that's not to say that they're not out there.
Right.
It just takes a good eye to see what you're looking for. And in fact, I'm from Cape May County. Our property is in Goshen, and we have a small retail nursery where we grow over 75 species of plants.
Oh,
but there are several throughout the county and the tri-state area that do the same. So they are available. You just got to kind of know where to look, how to find them.
All right, I'm actually going to jump to one of the last questions since we're talking about it. So when you talk about landscapers and nurseries, in your experience, how have you found local landscapers are to the idea of planting native plants?
So it's just like with anything. If there's a demand, there will be a supply, right? So if you are wanting to see native species in your garden, maybe you want to get started with the help of a landscape designer. There's plenty of folks out there that are focused on that work, can do a design for your garden, and then if you want to hire a landscape crew to come in and plant it, there's plenty of folks that would come out, kind of spec those out, lay out the design for you, and then they can plant and maintain. It's definitely an up and coming topic, right? Like as the word gets out, we know about, maybe you don't know about Doug Talmay's book, Bringing Nature Home.
I do,
That was the big catalyst back in early 2013 to kind of get this movement rolling. So the word is spreading, it's becoming more popular, and people don't want to like spend so much time maintaining their gardens, right? So if you have the inputs to put in early spring, late fall, you can kind of just sit back and relax. So us, the Wildlife Gardener, we do offer design services, and we can kind of help you with a maintenance plan. And then it's just really working with those landscapers to kind of show them, hey, this is not a weed, this is a native plant. So there has to be some back and forth there, but it's definitely growing in the area for sure.
And you mentioned Doug Talamy, because he has spoken a couple of years in a row up in Avalon. And one of the things that he talks about is removing some lawn, right? And giving that over to plants, because lawn doesn't really do anything for us.
It does not provide anything. It gives us something to do, mow the lawn, right? Or fertilize or water it, but these native plants don't need any of those inputs, you know? So it really saves a lot of time and lets you enjoy your summer.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, well, why don't we talk then a little bit about the plants. How did you guys decide what types of plants to put here?
Yeah, so we're here in Stone Harbor. We're along the Atlantic coast. And all of the species that you see planted here were selected for different characteristics. Mainly, we needed some salt tolerance, being so close to the beach. We needed drought tolerance because it's the heat of summer now, and we know these plants could wilt without it. But they were also selected to provide blooms throughout the growing season. So very important if you're really interested in attracting pollinators and wildlife to your garden is to have something blooming throughout the whole season, early spring to late fall. So that's how we kind of came up with this design. Also, just from a design perspective, you want, you know, some different size plants. You want some short guys, some tall guys. We have some shrubs. We've got some grasses in here. And that's really just to add to the diversity of the planting area and provide enough resources that the wildlife can really utilize it.
You want to pick a couple that you like that are your favorites?
Sure. Well, we could focus on what's blooming right now. So if you want to take a look at this beautiful butterfly milkweed, this is a native milkweed. It blooms orange and it's very short. But our butterfly weed can survive in really rough habitats. You see it blooming in the dunes. You see it blooming in areas where there's really poor soil conditions. And it's also a host plant for the monarch butterfly, which is a very important species that uses the Atlantic coast to make their travels north and south each year. So a great host plant for monarchs. Of course, if you want more monarchs, you can go with the regular common milkweed, which is much taller, pink flowers, and will spread quite prolifically. Butterfly weed's a little better behaved than common milkweed. And then we've got Agastache right here. And so this is in the mint family. Has a square stem. It's very aromatic. It can actually be used as an herb, so you can actually utilize the leaves in culinary situations. But this is a great mid-season bloomer that provides lots of nectar to our bees and butterflies. And you can see there's lots of bees flying around visiting. This is a heavy cedar. So if you want an area to kind of fill in, you can see kind of how we planted this garden. We gave a lot of room for things to grow and spread in. So this will actually set seed and spread over time into an area.
great.
So that's a great one.
And then what's the big tall one over there?
Yeah, so this is a viburnum. I'm just going to come in here. So it's actually in the process of setting fruit right now.
Oh yeah?
Shrubs are a great addition to any wildlife garden or any garden at all because they bloom early in the season. So when we're thinking nothing else is blooming in the landscape, shrubs are starting to pop and provide nectar and resources to butterflies and bees. And then later in the season, it'll be filled, all these umbels will be filled with fruit, and birds will come by and eat those up.
Oh, that's great.
And then right here we have another member of the mint family, which is Bradbury's Monarda. This is our shortest Monarda. Monarda is bee balm. So if you think about those flowers, they have kind of tubular flowers. It's starting to set seed now. And it also smells wonderful.
Oh, it does.
And so this is another one. This is our shortest Monarda. It will spread into an area kind of low growing, but it's an early blooming pink flower. And those tubular flowers can actually attract hummingbirds as well.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So if homeowners are thinking about, I don't want to have to water because water conservation is a big thing, can you pick out any particular ones that are the most drought tolerant?
Yeah, so here, again, along the coast, there's lots of species that do really well in dune habitats, but they can also tolerate different situations. So one of our favorites is seaside goldenrod.
Okay.
That's a late blooming species. It'll get about 3 to 4 feet tall, but in the fall it's actually loaded with yellow flowers.
Nice.
It's one of the most important nectar plants for migrating monarchs heading south. So we've had several wonderful looks at monarchs just covering the seaside goldenrod in the fall, because that's where they'll hang out and get their energy to move south. Butterfly weed was another great one. We have several native grasses in here which have very deep fibrous roots, so they can actually mine water up from very deep in the soil. Their roots will actually go to, like up to 3 feet deep.
Oh wow.
So another great drought tolerant plant is little blue stem. We've got Indian grass, big blue stem, lots of great native grasses that don't require a lot of inputs. Prairie dropseed is another one, native grass that will do really well in droughty situations. But really, if you're planting at the right time of year, you should be good to last through the summer. So early spring, late fall are great times to establish new plants. Now we're getting into the heat of July. I wouldn't recommend planting right now unless you're able to supplementally water for a few weeks. But all of our natives are specially adapted to our local soils and how they hold water, but also our climate patterns.
Right.
And getting that water in early spring, late fall helps them to stay well adapted under the soil. And they're perennial, so they come back every year.
Exactly.
Can't
That's
beat
wonderful.
it.
Yeah, now you guys planted this, you and Dustin were here in the fall.
Yes.
Right? And they looked beautiful even through the
Yeah.
winter, like some of the stalks coming up through the grass here.
Yes.
So it gave interest in the wintertime.
Yes.
And now we've been fortunate that we've had a lot of rain, but these are doing beautifully. You know, so
They really are. I'm very impressed. Everything came back. We didn't have any mortality throughout the winter.
Yeah.
And that's because we got them in early enough that those roots really established, and then they were able to just pop right back through.
Okay.
It's also great that we have some mulch here to kind of keep the weeds down.
Got
you
it.
know, anytime you're doing a planting, you got to think about how it's going to compete with weeds. So early spring is another great time to do plantings, but you're competing with all those annual spring weeds that are coming up.
Got it. Okay. Now, one last question. If homeowners are interested and they see this and they go, okay, I want to see something else, can you suggest any other places where people can go and see some other native gardens that have been planted?
Yeah, so actually right here in Stone Harbor, over on the main drag when you come in, is that 98th Street? 96th Street. So there's the water tower and the public restrooms. Those are all native gardens surrounding that area. Cape May County Park and Zoo, we just put in 2 new native gardens.
Okay.
One is right by the stage where you're going into like the safari to see the giraffes. There's a beautiful native plant garden there.
Oh, great.
That was just established. And actually Middle Township Environmental Commission is working on a program called the Pollinator Pathway to kind of gather up these areas where you can find these native gardens and have folks be able to go and see them.
Wonderful.
Sometimes there are native plant tours available. I think Morris River, Citizens United for the Morris River hosts a native garden tour every summer, so you can actually go around and see those. And then New Jersey Audubon has several gardens in Cape May that are all native plants.
Excellent, excellent. And then also, you said that you can support people that want to buy some plants. Are there other nurseries in the area that you can recommend that have them?
Yeah, so the Wildlife Gardener in Goshen is number one. We have retail sales in the spring and fall, but we're also open all season long by appointment.
Okay.
And many of these native plant focused nurseries are folks just like you and me that are working a job, but they have this passion project on the side. So a lot of those nurseries are open by appointment, but also have sale dates that they kind of bring everything out. So we've got the Wildlife Gardener in Goshen. There's also Goshen Gardens, and these are all just onto the mainland, like 15 minutes from here. There's Flora for Fauna Nursery, which is in Woodbine.
Okay.
Summer Sweet Native Plants is in Mays Landing. And then, like I said, many of your garden centers are starting to carry some native species. So there's good ways that you can have a conversation with them, make sure they're the straight species. We don't want to be planting too many cultivars because they're not providing those resources that the wildlife needs. And then I'm going to provide you with some resources to post on the website for other resources in the area, other native plant nurseries in the area. There's
great.
Lots. There's so many little backyard gardeners that are trying to sell some of their plants. But also, if you meet someone that's into native plant gardening, they love to share seeds and plants. A lot of these guys are going to spread quite rapidly, so you can easily divide some of these species and share them with a friend. So that's a great way to get involved too.
So really the homeowner needs to take the initiative as well. Especially if you have a landscaper, you just need to say, hey, I want some more single, what's it called again? Single species or
straight species.
Straight species.
We don't want
Remember
cultivars. Yeah, there's also a really good resource. It's called Jersey Yards. It's by the Barnegat Bay Foundation, and you can kind of go into their website and plug in what your conditions are. Do you have full sun? Do you have shade? Do you have wet soil, sandy, dry soil? And they will spit out what species are going to do really well there.
Okay.
But like I said, there's designers that will come out, do a site visit with you. We will go out and walk the property, see what your goals are, where you're looking to do a planting, and we can even just provide a plant list for you.
Right.
If you're just kind of shopping around. So
great.
Lots of resources out there.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, this is Brittany Welch, and she is from the Native Gardener.
The Wildlife Gardener.
But it's native, that's the important
It is.
thing. And please come visit our beautiful pollinator garden. We're on 2nd Avenue in between 109th and 110th Street. Brittany, thank you so much for everything.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.